Emotional independence through spiritual means. I got this idea by through YouTube. That is, they will suggest hot topics to put tags on your program when you post your YouTube program. And this was one of the top ones: emotional independence. People are wanting to know how to attain that, and I don't know exactly what that means or what it meant. It conjured up some ideas in my thinking, and I'm going to share those with you today. I don't know if it'll address the overwhelming need to have emotional independence, but I think it will, because a lot of times we are emotionally out of control, or we do things based on emotion that if we would think about them, and we often do later, maybe we wouldn't do. You have probably seen the signs that say don't give money to people on the street corner because it doesn't do any good. Well, why do we do that? The thing that makes us do that is usually emotion. We feel for these people and we want to help. And we don't always know, are we helping or are we perpetuating the problem? But we respond to things like this emotionally. This is why I have a hard time turning cats down that show up at our house. We've got a little one now that actually belongs to a neighbor, but it seems to like me better. And I can't say no to it, when it looks at me and does its little thing. But that's probably not a very healthy attitude, because as Troy says, we'll have 15 of those things one of these days. But I will draw the line on how many we have, and I think I have drawn the line. But there's an emotional side that we get involved in. We also see this in politics. We see, and I don't talk about politics from one side of the fence or the other, but there's a lot of emotionalism in that. If you can get somebody's emotion, if you can get the person to buy in emotionally to whatever story you're telling, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Religion's the same thing. In fact, it runs pretty much on emotion. It's you get into a crowd of people that are praising the Lord and singing and rock band playing, and it's just everything about the setting is emotionally charged, and we get involved in that, and we will do kind of go with the flow of the crowd. I think I shared with you that I was at a Billy Graham crusade years ago in Kansas City, and those things are just completely captivating. The whole aura of the whole experience. Thousands of people, in a stadium, and this world famous evangelist is down there talking. I almost ran down to the altar. It just and people do by the hundreds. They just flock down, maybe by the thousands. I don't know. And then later on, they kind of will cool off. There's the cooling off period. That's why it used to be when you got married, there was a 3-day period. It was for blood tests back then. They don't do that anymore. But now it's a cooling off period. Are you sure you're not just emotionally charged and jumping into this relationship that's hopefully will last a while? So there's that element. And I, of course, having performed well over 1,000 weddings, I've seen that many times. People jump into it, and you can tell by how they look and how they talk and how they behave. I was that way too when I got married. I've gotten over it. It takes about 10 years. But it's it's just a whole different thing. And I think it's kind of a natural conspiracy, to pair up and have children and all that we're sucked into this whole mindset. And then we wake up one day, we've got 2 or 3 kids, and we don't know how that all happened. But it did happen. And Beth, she wanted more kids, and I'm saying, no. 2 is plenty. Yeah, she came from a family of 10, and 2 is nothing to her, it's like, but I came from 4 kids. So I thought half that would be about right, and so I think it was. Anyway, that has nothing to do with in emotional independence. What is that? And can we achieve it through spiritual means? And I think we can. But as everything I get up here and talk about, I never give you an easy way out. There's no easy way to do this. It's mainly just acknowledging when you are emotionally out of control, when you are letting your emotions carry you down a road that you don't really want to go. I've shared with you before many times that there was a time when I thought I had to reach a level of spiritual awareness where I would stay there all the time. And that picture is emotional. It's the belief that you can achieve a state and stay there, and you'll always be there, and you will have learned the lessons that you're here to learn. So there's an emotion attached to that. And the way you tell there's an emotion attached to it is if the next day you start feeling depressed, that you're not that high spiritual master that you thought you were yesterday. That's an emotion. And it's a letdown. It's an emotional letdown. It's a crash. It's not a big crash, but it's nevertheless, it's a roller coaster ride. It's an emotional roller coaster ride. I want to be all I can be spiritually, and I'm feeling like today is the day. I'm feeling like I'm right there. Tomorrow, not so much. And so that's an emotional letdown. So I have dealt with that particular problem pretty well, and not saying I've totally overcome it, but because I don't particularly like being in the valley side of life. I don't think anybody does. But I've never learned how to not be in it. I've been in the high places and I've been in the low places. I've been in the high places, I've been in the low places. It's like weather, or it's like the stock market. It never stays in one place, and neither do we. But somehow we think we're supposed to. Somehow we think that's the objective of this whole spiritual learning. One of these days I'm going to graduate. Well, what do you do when you graduate? That's when your life starts. It doesn't end there. It starts there. Talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Beginnings and endings and all that good stuff, and I'm sure you've forgotten all of that by now. So the feeling factor, when many of us think of self-help as a means of improving our life through changing our attitude, we may focus mainly on our thinking. As important as this is, we do well to consider our emotions and who or what is controlling them. That's the key right there. How are you feeling at this moment and why? Do you own your feeling? Do you own your emotion? Or are you thinking about something or someone and you're worried about it maybe a little bit, or you're a little miffed by what somebody said? And being miffed, that's an emotion. And so if you're miffed at somebody, they're pushing that emotional button. So it's just good to be aware of these things. Where am I emotionally right now? Am I where I want to be, and do I have something to say about it? But it's a little easier to be aware of your thinking, because when you're thinking negatively. It's like screens running in your mind. You can see these negative thoughts. But as I point out, you can actually change your thinking into a positive stream and still have an undercurrent of negativity. Still feel things are not working out quite right. I'm getting ahead of myself. Is it even possible to choose how we feel? Or are we satisfied to let the world make this choice for us? So I guess one of the things that we reach, one of the points we reach, is the value of emotion. How much value do we put on it? Is it really important? If I'm not feeling so well, do I say, well, that's just the way the world is, that I can't keep my emotions going up all the time? Or do I even need to? Is it really that valuable? So what happens when your emotions drop, when you don't feel so good about yourself and about your world? what happens to the quality of your life. That's what it is. The quality of life is your emotional experience. And when that's down, your quality of life is down, you may try to think positive, try to get everything back up. But do you try to get positive emotion? Do you think in that terms, in those terms? And often I think our emotion is so attached to the picture, the appearance of something, that we say, well, I can't get my emotion going in the right direction until I get this thing fixed. And then I'll feel better. I'll get my emotion up. So the secret there is the same as thinking. You know, you don't think positive to make a situation look positive. You say the situation is what it is. Is that what I want to have control my thinking and my emotion? Or do I have a choice? Can I do something different? So the undercurrent of emotion, I pointed out that we can change our thinking but still feel as if bad things are brewing, like being caught in an undercurrent that pulls us out in water way over our heads. We can be inspired mentally. We can change our thinking. But if you watch your feelings, that's really the important thing. Watch your emotion. Am I thinking positive and feeling negative? You know, your house divided against itself, as Jesus said, if that's the case. And I'm saying you, I'm saying all of us. You know, that's our condition. We have a thinking faculty and we have a feeling faculty. And both those need to be on the same page. One of the positive things about a true spiritual breakthrough is it wipes away all mental and emotional responsibility. And by that I mean we respond to the higher awareness without effort, both mentally and emotionally. Our thoughts follow it and our emotions follow it. It's a hard thing to describe. You cannot make yourself feel positive all the time and stay there. I don't think it's possible. But you can say to yourself, you can understand that even if you drop to the lowest level of emotion, even if you're feeling like a worthless worm of the dust, that you will come out of that. The time will come when the emotion will rise. It's like a cloudy day. The sun will again break through and you will be okay. But when you're down there, that's your life experience. And so many of us don't think that we have anything to say about that. That we're down because we're down. That's just the way it is. I don't have any choice. And that's the question we're raising. Do we have a choice? And the answer to that is yes, we do. And that may be enough to know. That may be the one takeaway from this whole time together, is that, okay, I don't necessarily know how to bring myself out, but I do have a choice and I'll figure it out. Figure out how to make that change. But we tie so many of our thoughts and emotions to what is going on out there someplace. So the world is dictating to us how we're going to think and feel. And if we're okay with that, if we think that's the norm, and 99% of the people in the world do, I think, that I can't be happy until I've fixed whatever's going on outside. But if we get to the point where we at least entertain the possibility that it's not what happens outside that matters, it's how I react to it, it's how I respond to it. That's what determines the quality of my life. So I want to improve that. I become aware of that. I become aware I'm feeling this way, not because I have to, but because I'm making a choice to. And don't say that in a condemning way, because you're saying, well, I'm making a dumb choice, so I must be dumb. Don't put that formula together. It's just what we do as humans. We respond to appearances. And we do that because it seems like the right and only thing to do. So a guy like Jesus comes along and says, don't do that. And we don't just say, okay, I won't do that anymore. we keep doing it, and we do it for a long time. And we'll do it even when we know we shouldn't be doing it or don't have to be doing it. But it's okay that we do, just so we understand the principle that we're dealing with. This thing outside of me is not the thing that's making me feel or think bad. I'm making the choice to do it. So if we can at least bring that much of the game into ourselves, the ball into our court, we always have something to say about how we experience our life. And that is kind of the essence of the spiritual message. There's a big debate about who Jesus was. I don't know if you knew that, but it's been going on for 2,000 years. And one of the reasons he is interpreted to be the person they think he is, others think he is by how they define this universe, how they define the world. There are people that have believed for a long time that the world we live in is corrupt, which it is. It's corrupt and it needs to be fixed. And the thing that's going to fix it, that's defined by, depending on the school of thought you're involved in. In the day of the Jews, it was a Messiah that was going to come. In the day of the early Christians, it was Jesus going to return. But it's how we define the world we live in and what do we think will solve the problem. That system is based on the belief in separation, the paradigm of separation. I have this problem, the world's messed up, and I need somebody to come in and fix it. So that's an emotional expectation. So a guy like Jesus shows up and he's labeled Messiah. He doesn't do the job. So there's a big letdown. And then 40, 50 years later, another fellow shows up in 132 AD, Bar Kokhba, something like that. They had a revolt in Jerusalem, where he actually ran the Romans out of Jerusalem. Everybody felt good about that. They were happy for 3 years. The Romans weren't too happy. They regrouped and came back and wiped them all out. And that was really a turning point for Judaism and Christianity. Christianity and Judaism split apart. The Jews stopped focusing so much on the future. The Savior's going to come. They stopped doing that. Not totally, but they stopped it like they were doing it, waiting for a Messiah. Because every time the Messiah shows up, he gets wiped out, and they got to start over. I remember probably in the 80s that they were announcing that some Jewish rabbi in New York was the expected Messiah. They thought he had showed up again. Well, that didn't work out either. David Koresh, however you say his name, down in, where was that? Waco. He was a Messiah. If you do a Messiah search, how many Messiahs have there been? You'll find over 200 have been listed, and not just in old tradition, but modern day. There's some alive today that are considered the Messiah, and it's just when you read their stories, you read their stuff, it's so ridiculous. It's hard to believe that people still do this kind of stuff, but they do. They're waiting for somebody to come and fix the problem. And by fixing the problem, it means from now on, I'm going to be able to feel great. My emotions are going to be healed because somebody's going to fix my problem. And my problem, in whatever form, is a corrupt world. It's full of evil people. It's full of people that are doing things I don't agree with. And when we get rid of all of them, then I will have permission to feel good. My emotions will be healed. So that's been going on a long time. It'll continue to go on because we are a very outer-oriented world, and not just here in America. It's worldwide. We're all looking for some kind of a savior, and it comes in many forms, can come in many forms. But not a single one will do the job. It's an inside job. It's an individual job. And so we need to learn at least the mechanics of how it works. Who's in charge of your emotions? You or the world? That's really what it comes down to. And you say, well, the next question is, who do you want to be in charge of your emotions? That's a harder one to answer. I really want control of my own emotions, but do I really want to put forth the effort to do it? Do you want to be healed? That's the question. And it's a question to every one of us. I'm not preaching a sermon here. I'm talking about a reality we all face. Do we really want the responsibility of taking charge of our thoughts and our feelings, our emotions? We want it, but do we do it? You can do it starting today and never have a negative emotion the rest of your life. You want to do that? Yeah, you do, okay. We expect good report from you. And I think that's another mistake I used to make all the time, is I would think that I'm going to reach a point where that's it, I've got it, just like you. And I will have that from now on. And I just don't think it works that way. I think we're here living this, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but we're living this life, and I'm not saying that can't happen, because I think it does happen with people. I'm not discouraging you, I'm encouraging you. So, but the normal, that would be natural. It's natural for us to feel and be positive. It's normal for us to be depressed. Does that make sense? In other words, you'll find a lot of people that are feeling pretty bad about themselves. That's normal. You can find good company if you start talking about your problem, because everybody relates to it. And they'll say, you think that's bad. And they'll top it. See, why did I start that path? I'm not sure. Oh, normal and natural. It's natural for us not to be there. It's natural for us to not react to every negative condition. It's normal for us to do it. It's not natural. We have the ability, that which is in us is greater than that which is in the world. That defines our natural ability. So we have this natural ability, but we normally respond in negative ways because the world is sympathetic to that. And I'm, again, making a very blanket statement. I'm not saying everybody is like me, but I'm saying that the human condition is what it is because we think something outside of us is in control or has the ability to control us. And when we change that and we accept our natural state, that I do not have to react to this condition. Maybe I normally do, but I don't have to. That's the natural state. And that's a very different way to think of yourself. That I have this ability to see beyond, but I have been so programmed to look straight at the problem and react to it that that's the choice I usually make. And I'm not just saying me, I'm saying that's kind of what we do. We may scarcely be aware of this emotional riptide until we suddenly notice how far from shore we are. It doesn't take much to send us into a fear-based reaction to the smallest things. Have you ever listened to somebody that got caught in a riptide and they didn't realize it? They look up and they're a mile from the shore. That, to me, that's one of the most terrifying visualizations. To be out in the ocean and be swept out in a current that far. But in a sense, that's what happens to us when we lose emotional control, when we let something take us down that path. We're out there in a place where, it's terrifying because we feel there's nothing we can do about it. And it's not easy to get control of our emotion, get control of the emotional side. But it's not easy to get control of the thinking side either. Neither one of these things is easy. What is easy is the habitual response of just going with it. Just saying, there it is, I'm negative, that's the end of the story. And I'll be negative as long as that thing is there, as long as that's going on. We just kind of We don't think these things. It's just that's how we respond. It's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. But so that's what the spiritual thing is all about. It comes in, kind of shakes us on the shoulder and says, that's one way to do it, but you don't have to do it that way. There are other ways of approaching your life. And so we generally think, well, I've got to get control of my thinking. I've got to think positive. We also need to feel positive, become aware of where our feelings are, where our emotion is, and not let things control us so much. How do we gain emotional independence? The first step is to realize we can. And that's a big step, to just say, I could do this. The emotions we harbor are of our own choosing. If we do not accept this as a fundamental fact, then the world will choose our emotions for us. And we all know what that's like, don't we? We all know what it's like to have somebody tick us off. And do they really have that power? Or are we giving them that power? So we get caught up in that, we react that way quickly, but then we stop ourselves and say, this is in my ballpark. This is in my court. The ball's in my court. I like what Emerson said. He said, you may sometimes talk with the gravest and best citizen, and the moment the topic of religion is broached, he runs into a childish superstition. That childish superstition is emotion. It's, I have been taught this all my life, so I respond in this way. And that is, when this thing happens, I'm going to feel bad, I'm going to feel angry, I'm going to feel fear. My emotions, they're just there, and they're going to respond to whatever the situation is. So it's like we live with this superstition that is in charge of this. And we want to interrupt that. That's what a guy like Jesus did very well, I think. The second step is to ask ourselves how we would feel if this emotionally unsettling appearance was resolved. I've raised this question many times. How would you feel? You've got this problem going on. How would you feel if it were resolved? And if you actually will ask that question and then answer it with the feelings themselves. Say you've got a financial situation going on and you're afraid, you're experiencing fear because it feels like it's bigger than you. It's bigger than what you can afford right now. So you have a negative response to it. But how would you feel if that were resolved? And actually let those feelings come to the surface. Let yourself experience those feelings. And you will demonstrate in that moment that you can change the way you respond emotionally to something. You're not forcing yourself to do it. You're just saying, you're just asking yourself the question, how would I feel? And then letting yourself feel how you would feel. And that is a really pretty effective way to get a sense of where you want to go. We allow ourselves to experience the emotional release into the serenity of feeling all is well. Freedom, peace, joy, and new creative stirrings take the place of emotionally induced stress. Maybe not instantly, but we can get there. What I have noticed is when I become preoccupied with some issue, like when we were moving here, for example, that's all I thought about for I don't know how long. But when this all subsided, I began thinking again about working on a book, messing around with my music, or doing things that, going out and taking pictures, things that when you are under stress, you don't have time to do. They're not that important. You got to deal with this issue. And by dealing with this issue, you're robbing your creative side. You're robbing your imagination. You're robbing yourself of all of these powers that you have. And it's, we know we're doing that. So the question is, how do I interrupt that? How do I stop doing that? How can I be in the midst of this thing I do have to deal with and still be at peace? Well, how would I feel if it was resolved? That's one way to step into it. Answer that question. And not just answer it with your head, answer it with your heart, answer it with your emotions. And you'll find that you do have something to say about it. When Jesus spoke of the truth that sets us free, the freedom we long for is first felt at the emotional level. And that's a pretty important line, because we think of it as a head thing, as a thinking thing. We might think of it as an unconditional emotion, feelings that arise not because of a positive turn of events, but because we feel blessed to simply be alive. So an unconditional emotion, I feel good for no particular reason. Whoever heard of that? I just feel good because it's a new day. Or I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm walking. I found my keys. I can be happy about some of the simplest things if I let myself be here and be in this moment. In this case, our emotion is prompted by an inner knowing, the stabilizing awareness that we're part of something much grander than our ever-changing surroundings. And I guess that's really the key to an emotional high or emotional success, is remembering life is bigger than this. It's bigger than this thing that's going on here. And I'll get through this. Whatever it is, I'll get through it. And so I can stop investing all of my emotions in a negative picture and bring it to something greater. We can and we do. We can gain emotional independence, first by realizing we can. Secondly, by learning to feel the freedom we desire. Check yourself at the feeling level now. How would you feel if all your burdens were suddenly lifted? So we can start right now, today. That would be the main takeaway from this talk, is how would I feel right now if all of my life's burdens were lifted? And you can actually go there emotionally and say, this is a new day. This is a new beginning. Because I let it go emotionally. How easy is that? Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and have a wonderful week.